Greetings, Bowtie Guy 5 here. We are continuing our formal wear mini-series. In the last video I discussed shoes, specifically styles of shoes appropriate for men's formal wear. Now I would like to dive a little deeper into some of the history and backstory of those shoe styles that I discussed. So the first I'm going to be discussing is the patent leather dress shoe. Now, leather has been around for quite some time. The process of skinning animals and treating it for the uses of clothing and bags and other things has been around for quite some time. But the process of patent leather specifically goes back to the late 1700s, 1790s to the early 1800s. The process of patent leather was a method of preservation to use oils and things to preserve the leather in a different kind of way. And what set the patent leather apart, as you can see here, is this high glossy finish. So at the time, the leather preservation, it was used on things like boots, belts, different things like that to increase its longevity. Now when the patent leather comes along, there is one man in particular that I'd like to mention, and that is Seth Boyden, a man from Newark, New Jersey. This is around 1819. And he comes up with a way of commercializing or streamlining this process and really bringing it to the masses. And the way that the patent leather finds its way into the formal wear circuits, this glossy finish, gives it kind of a luxe look. So people started adapting it with their more formal wear. Once it starts getting onto like shoes in particular. And of course back then we're speaking differently. This is the early 1800s, so it's like boots and things like that. We have to kind of skip ahead into the later 1800s and into the 1900s where we start getting into patent with tuxedos. See, and as you can see here, I've got two shoes here. One that's treated and one that isn't, and you can just kind of see the regular leather here. While it has some durability to it, you can see there's it's seen better days. There's some on a person, like you would call this laugh lines, but just some kind of wrinkling and some little scuffing and things like that. Now the patent, I mean, unless you really work to damage the patent, and you can also hear like that when you knock on the patent, you get more of a hollow sound, and you can see the finish on this, hardly any scuffs, nice and smooth. Of course it is fragile to the elements. You want to be careful about getting it wet and things like that. You don't use a normal shoe polish on it. There's a different process to cleaning them, which I'm going to be discussing in my next video. But I just kind of wanted to show the patent shoe off in a little greater detail and go a little ways back into its history. I'm always interested to dive back into the history of different garments and things like that. That's kind of the bread and butter of my channel. Next, I would like to discuss the opera pump, or the crushed velvet slipper. Okay, so we have discussed the patent leather shoe. Now I would like to discuss the opera pump, or court shoe. So shoes, the pump in particular, it's a low-cut shoe, usually comes down down in front. It's definitely a loafer style. This one has a little more of a lip to it than a more traditional opera pump. They can be patent as well, like the Oxfords that I showed. They can also be this crushed velvet style. As I discussed in the last video, sometimes they'll always be decorated with some kind of adornment. Mine has the little clasp here, purely decorative. Sometimes you'll see a little bow, if it's the patent leather variety. And then with the crushed velvet, you'll also see the embroidery and different adornments, but it's always going to have some kind of decoration toward the middle of the shoe. That style of shoe has actually been around since the 17th century, shoes with the buckles, and at that time it was more of a functional process where you could actually adjust the buckle like a belt buckle. You could tighten or loosen the shoe. But now it's mostly a decorative process. And these were all became a very common type of shoe for men's formal wear, again because of with the adornments. You can bejewel them and really class them up to a higher level than a traditional shoe or like a daytime shoe. So of course they're going to be naturally seen as more of a formal wear shoe because of how much you can glam it up, as you would say. Now the velvet, or crushed velvet in particular, you probably are not aware of this, traces back as early as the 800s. I found that very titillating because I've done a lot of history videos on this channel and I have never traced an aspect of menswear that far back. So I was pretty cheesed when I read that. So cashmere, and not cashmere the material, but cashmere the city. Traders from there exported this fabric, although Cairo was probably one of the biggest producers, and it's basically just small cut fibers woven evenly that gives you that kind of smooth texture. It can be made from linen, cotton, wool, even synthetic fibers, which is probably more common today. And velvet really just means smooth. It's a word for smooth, because you have that smooth, they say smooth like velvet, because the words one and one. Kind of maybe hard to see here, but it just has really soft texture to it. I said in the last video it's almost like petting a kitty, like a real fine-haired cat. She just had that really soft, smooth texture. Again, this is something associated with formal wear because velvet is just classy. It looks really luxe, expensive. Even though these shoes I think were like $49.99 on clearance, it just looks expensive. And I love that. I love to be able to look expensive without spending a ton of money. And then on the inside, this one is just kind of an embroidered pattern, or with a little bit of texture to it. Sometimes the inside will be leather as well, or it'll be some kind of silk or satin treatment. Sometimes it's quilted, or it may just be a lining. It varies from shoe to shoe, which is another reason I find these so exciting, because there's just so many different varieties and different things you can do with it, so not one shoe is the same. Whereas you compare it to the patent leather, you know, you have the stitching here and around the sides, and then you have that patent leather finish. Anybody that has a patent leather shoe, it's all going to more or less look the same. Some may be a little shinier than others depending on how they care for their shoe. But you're never going to see, unless somebody buys the exact same pair of opera pump, you're never going to see two of the same shoe. You have so many different kind of options. Now, caring for the shoe, I'm going to go over that more in my next video when I discuss shoe care. But I wanted to just go over the history of, a little brief history of the two styles of shoes. I always find it interesting to go back in time and kind of see where what we wear comes from. So I hope you have found this video informative, you've learned something from this, you've expanded your formal wear horizons. So please hit me up in the comments section, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time.